be here tonight. I'd like to thank Jack O'Connor and Patricia King, and in fact all the team at Siptu, who put so much of their work into making sure that tonight would gather in as many people who wanted to come. And like Jack, I want to commend all of you, to congratulate all of you for being here. You're here because you care. You're here because many of you are members of Siptu, but quite a number of you are citizens who've heard about this and have come along. Some of you, because I know this from yesterday, are actually members of the American Bar Association who heard this was happening and have come along. Why? Why do you care? Why is this an evening that you've spent your time and your money to sit in seats and, yes, be entertained by great Irish musicians? I met Donald Lunny earlier. You're going to have great musicians and poets who have given their time voluntarily for nothing. Why? Why do we do it? Why is it that Ireland is, as I understand it, per head of population, the most generous country in the world for countries like Somalia? Why do we do it? I will tell you at the end of what I have to say, a story that will, I think, resonate with you and explain why we do it. But in the meantime, let me first of all take a moment, which I didn't expect that I would do, to talk about individual pain and sorrow. I'm going to meet later this evening with the parents of Valerie Place, who was killed in crossfire in Somalia in 1992. I didn't intend to mention, they're probably surprised that I do mention publicly, but the reason that I mentioned their pain is that earlier today I heard about two other women, Spanish doctors, members of Médecins Sans Frontières, who have been kidnapped from Dadaab camp today. We don't know where they are, their parents don't know where they are. It's that huge sacrifice of aid workers and the huge enduring pain and anxiety of parents of aid workers. Particularly, we have to say, and we understand that, if they are women, what's happening to them? What's happening to them this evening? We don't know. Having been in Dadaab, I would fear for that bandit land and for what may happen to them. But we hope and pray that they are safe and that their parents will soon hear of their release. Returning to Somalia after 19 years and hearing the United Nations declare famine in two regions of Somalia, the Lower Shabelle and Kakul, was heart-wrenching in July. Heart-wrenching because the UN is very careful about when it declares famine. We learned that probably at that stage in July, 28,000 or so children had died of starvation, And now many more have been dying, and many elderly and weaker women have also died of starvation. We could see the evidence all around us in Dullo in Somalia, which has become a transition post for those from Somalia who are en route to Ethiopia, to the Ado-Dallo camp. Families who reach Dallo have an opportunity to rest, or rather, in fact, collapse and just have the basics to give them a bit of energy. And that's just under some trees with the help of a local Somali NGO. I was there with Francis O'Keefe, who will address you later and you saw in the film, and Tom Arnold, and Trocra and Oxfam Ireland. I just have a picture in my mind of the first woman and her family that we met, Fatima Zabe. She was holding her emaciated 3-year-old, and her other 5 children were lying on the ground around her, surrounding her. She was barely able to answer the questions that I was asking her through translation. I actually felt uncomfortable asking the questions because she was so weary. And she did say that she had walked with her family from Oman, and when we asked how far that was, she said it was about 125 kilometers away. She didn't know where her husband was. The only spark of life for her and the other families around her was when a donkey cart with water came, and they all knew what to do. The children gathered the cans for the water and rose and queued to get some water. Nearby, I visited the Mother and Child Health Centre run by the Somali District Health Board with the support of Trokra. And again, there were long queues of women with malnourished children waiting to be weighed and assessed, and then given packets of plumpy nuts to bring them up their weight and stabilise them. As you know, the packet of plumpy nut is very valuable because you just take it into your mouth as a child, really contaminated water. And if the child takes those packets 2 a day over a period, the child will stabilise. But some children weren't gaining weight, and a nurse there explained, with some understanding, that other children in the family were so hungry, they were also having part of the plumpy nut. Even the mother, just to be able to continue to look after her children, was taking part of that local food. And the local district commissioner urged us to increase the support available, including in other areas where elderly and children have to be left to die before they can get here. And then he said a phrase that I know that Tom Arnold has also used, because we're affected by what's said to us locally there. Your eyes are your teacher. Your eyes are your teacher. What you see is what you learn. Our visit to the Dadaab camp, where the 2 Spanish aid workers were kidnapped from this morning. Our visit to Dadaab in northern Kenya, which is the largest refugee camp in the world, as you know, brought home to all of us the scale of the problem. It is in fact 3 separate camps, as you probably know: Agadera, Dagahela, and Ifo, known collectively as Dadaab. The camp was opened 20 years ago with a capacity for 90,000 people. It currently, when we were there, had over 370,000, but the numbers now are well over 400,000. And while we were there were somewhere between 1,300 and 1,500 arriving by the day. With Oxfam, we learned that there were about 60,000 who were not in the formal camps at all, women and children who were out in fields adjoining, because there wasn't room in the camps and there wasn't a way of processing them. The UN estimated at the time that there were some 10 million people already affected in parts of Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, and Djibouti. Why is this crisis worse this time than in 1992? I've thought about that quite a lot. The obvious reasons are the long-running conflict, cutting off access to large parts of Somalia, the fact that there hasn't been a functioning government, and the role of al-Shabaab, which is much worse than the warlords that I spoke to, in fact, when I was there as president, asking them to let the food get into Baidoa and Mogadishu. But there's a further factor, which I was particularly focused on: the extent to which man-made climate change may be aggravating an already vulnerable region. The drought cannot be attributed directly to climate change, but it shows the vulnerability of poor people in a region already subject to extreme climate variability. Communities that we heard say that the seasons are changing and have become unpredictable, that there are long periods of drought, and that the rains, when they come, are flash flooding, too heavy to be useful. There's evidence that recent warming has been especially strong in Africa. Temperatures for the 2001 to 2010 decade averaged 0.85 degrees Celsius above normal, and the 5 hottest years on record for the continent have all occurred since 2003. But what really struck me was that the Horn of Africa has had the hottest 8 years on record in succession, one after the other, the hottest 8 years. So that means that all the potential for drought, and for drought, worse than drought in the future, is there. And therefore, we know that the situation is going to continue to be very serious, and it won't be 19 years before I fear that there will be a further serious situation, if not famine, in the Horn of Africa. When I went to Somalia as President of Ireland in 1992, at the urging of the same Irish aid agencies, it was in October, very near the end of the dry season, the now. when the rains are about to come. This time it was July, and the fact that we were hearing famine declared in July, knowing what that meant, was particularly disturbing. I am in fact haunted by the images of what we saw. I use every opportunity to raise the issue, and that's why I'm so glad that so many of you took a personal decision this evening to come out and to do what you can, to contribute to come to this concert, to help Siptu, to show that the trade union movement in Ireland cares deeply about this issue. I told you that I would give a context for us as Irish people of why we might well care. The context goes back more than 150 years. In the spring of 1847, the Choctaw people gathered to commemorate being driven from their tribal lands. They called it the Vale of Tears 10 years before, when they were driven into a part of Oklahoma. And as they gathered there, we believe that possibly a passing priest, somebody, told them about an island very far away where people were dying of starvation because the stable crop had failed for the third year. This was 1847. It had failed in 1845, it had failed in 1846, and this was 1847. And those Choctaw people understood very well what that would mean in reality when a stable potato crop fails for the third year. And they raised $173 and sent it for the relief of Irish famine victims. And I was very affected by that story. And I had the opportunity, as President of Ireland, on all of your behalf, of going back in 1997, in my last year as President, to Oklahoma, and thanking the Choctaw people for what had been done 150 years earlier. I have to say, I'm very proud. I'm an honorary chieftain of the Choctaw people, so treat me with respect in the future. But more importantly, we often think of the wounds of history, the bad things. The good things are also remembered. I have an imaginative idea that there could be a president of Somalia who will come to Ireland in, say, about 2080 and make a big thing about expressing to the Irish people, you cared about us when we were in difficulty. We're now a prosperous African nation, and we're glad to link with rather reduced Europe in size and scale in the world terms. And you are our friends, and we remember that. You know, it's an imaginative idea, but it's a true idea. You're not here looking for any recognition or tribute for what you've done in coming here. But quite honestly, I'm very proud of an Ireland which, to say the least of it, is not in good times. We are in difficult times. There are families hurting, there are families in negative equity, there are families of unemployed, there are families regretting saying goodbye to their young as they emigrate. That's Ireland now. But we are a people with a very real connection with what's happening in the wider world. We're a people who look outwards, and that's one of our great strengths. We're a people who understand suffering and the need to lend a hand, literally just lend a helping hand. And to me, because this evening is a people-centered, it's the trade union movement, it's Siptu, it's you, all of you, making your individual decisions. I think it's, for me, one of the very special evenings. I'm haunted by Somalia. To find that this hall is full because we care matters so much. Ireland has been extremely generous. We can be proud of that. But we need to show the Somali people that we really care, and we need to get others to really care. And I salute all of you. I really appreciate what you have done. And I look forward, like you, to the music and dance and the poetry that will lift our spirits, but keep us on message for this evening. Thank you very much.